Hey guys, John here. I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, we're checking out the new Boss Waza Tube Amp Expander Core, this little beast over here. So this is basically the little brother to the big Waza Tube Amp Expander. It might be smaller, but it's still packed with wonderful features, and it's so much more than just a reactive load. So in this video, we're going to dive in and explore what this thing can do. But in any case, yeah, it looks cool, and as you can see, it's not really huge. You know, it's compact, as I said, and it looks cool, and it's very sturdy indeed. Now let's start with a demo song and see how I would use this in the studio, which is basically as a reactive load with impulse responses. So let's do that right now and enjoy. That sounded awesome. So that was my Schecter PT SLS Elite with the Fishman Fluence modern pickups in it. On the bridge pickup, the ceramic pickup on the active voicing. Into my ENGL Powerball II on channel 4. It's a very tight and modern sounding high gain channel. Excellent. The amp was being fed into the Tube Amp Expander Core, of course, which I used as the reactive load, with the reactive load setting to the stack mode, which is basically an impedance curve of a 4x12 cabinet. And then in the software, I loaded up some IRs that I created and that you can get for yourself as well in my web store. And that pack is based on a Heisu Demon speaker, and I used a blend between an SM57 and the 421 Kompakt mics. And then in the EQ section, I also applied a low cut, and that's it. Sounded really solid. So I guess we can already conclude that this thing sounds great in a studio setting when you use this as a reactive load. But as I mentioned, this thing is capable of so much more. So before we're going to dive into even more tones and all that good stuff, let's explore the main features that this thing has. Now, as I mentioned, of course, this thing is a reactive load, right? And this thing is powered by the Tube Logic technology. And that takes care of all the good feel and response and dynamics that you also get when you connect an amplifier to a real speaker cabinet. So that's an important trait for a reactive load to have. It has to feel and respond like as if you're connecting your amplifier to a real speaker. So the reactive load is really high quality here, and you can also choose between two different settings, the stack setting and the combo setting. Now, you're going to get different impedance interaction because a speaker cabinet that you connect your amplifier to in real life with real speakers has an impact on the tone of your amplifier. And a big 4x12 cabinet with V30s, for example, is going to sound different than a combo with a 1x10 speaker, for example. And with these two settings, you can basically change the impedance interaction, is how they call it. So it has an impact on the feel and the sound. For the things that I like to do, so rock and metal, I just choose the stack mode and I'm golden. But yeah, again, in terms of the feel and sound and just as the pure reactive load, also as you heard in the intro, I think this thing does a great job. Now, one thing that is very unique to this thing is that it has a built-in power amp, a 30 watt power amp. The big tube amp expander has a 100 watt power amp. This one has a 30 watt power amp. And let me talk about that for a second, because it's basically my favorite feature. Now, a lot of reactive loads these days have built-in attenuators. And with an attenuator, you can crank your amplifier and then lower the volume afterwards. But there are a couple of drawbacks to that usually. One of them is the fact that an attenuator has an impact on the dynamics and the tone of your amplifier. So a lot of times people, they use them to lower the volume of their amplifiers, but the response and the sound just isn't right. It's not the same. And also, a lot of reactive loads have the volume control going in steps, like 3 or 5 steps or so. And in those cases, it can be really hard to find the sweet spot for you in terms of the volume, okay? Now, what the tube amp expander core does is it takes the signal from the amplifier, it goes into the reactive load, and then it gets re-amplified by the internal power amp, which is very good and clean sounding. And then with the volume control, so the speaker out control, you can control the volume of your real speaker. So the real speaker gets connected on the back here. So this is where the amplifier goes into. And then if you're also using a real speaker, so using this basically as a kind of attenuator, you put the speaker into here. And then with the speaker out control over here, you control the volume. And the cool thing about this potentiometer is that it's very continuous, so very smooth. You can go from 0 volume to a little bit and more and more and more. So it's a very natural response, and you can basically choose any volume that you want. So that is very cool and unique. Now, you could even take a 10 watt amplifier or a 15 watt amplifier and make it a 30 watt amplifier. So that's also cool. And the fact that you can take an amplifier and crank it to your sweet spot, especially with vintage amplifiers that require some tube amp saturation, you take the sweet spot, you find the perfect master volume sweet spot, if you will, and then with the speaker out volume control, you choose the exact volume that you need. So that is a really cool feature. Now we also have the air feel, which has a dedicated control over here, the air feel level, and that is basically an amp in the room simulator. So it's kind of like a room reverb, if you will. Now in the editor, which we'll get to later, you can dial in the type, because there are 2 types, I believe. And with this control, you can dial in the amount of ambience that you get. And that sounds really nice, especially with the headphones out. So this has a headphones output with the dedicated volume control as well. Now there are 22 Boss cabs included with 5 different microphones, and you can change the distance and the position and all that good stuff. And you can blend 2 microphones to get the perfect mix, which is great. And you get a bunch of different cabinets, like 1x10s, 1x12s, 2x12s, 4x12s. So you can go quite deep. We'll try some of them later. You can also load up to 64 user impulse responses into this thing, which is wonderful. The unit also comes preloaded with 10 Celestion IRs, so that is also nice. So you don't really need to load IRs into here if you don't want to. I like doing that stuff. If you know my channel, you know I love my IRs, especially now that I've been making my own IRs. I've just been really enjoying loading those into units such as these, and they sound really good in here. Now the cool thing about the IR loader is that you can load 2 IRs at the same time and blend them together, as you heard in the intro. So blend 2 microphones, 2 speakers and whatnot, and you can run them in mono or in stereo. So that is also very cool. Now inside of this unit, per preset or per sound, you can also load a couple of stereo effects, a compressor, a delay, and a reverb, and you get multiple options. And we'll take a look at those later in the video as well, but that is cool. And this unit also has an effects loop on the back here, as you can see, and that is cool. And one of the reasons why that is so cool to have on a unit like this is, for example, when you're using a vintage style amplifier, sometimes they don't have an effects loop. And if you want to add some delay or reverb or modulation after the amplifier, which you would normally do with an effects loop, sometimes, it's just, you can't do that because of the way that those amps are built. With this thing, you can place any effect you want after the amplifier with the built-in effects loop. So that is really cool as well. In the editor, there is also a mix assistant feature, which kind of sculpts the sound to make it fit in the mix better. It also has a transient control, which can help to bring forward or control the transients of your guitar tone, so the pick attack basically. And on the unit itself, you can store up to 10 rigs, which is basically 10 presets. And in those presets, you can load effects, choose whichever cabinet you want, and so forth. On the back, of course, we have a line out, which is an XLR out, really cool, high quality stuff, and it even has a ground lift switch. So that is a cool touch as well. A very handy feature for a reactive load to have, in my opinion. And then the tube amp expander core also has a USB out. And the cool thing about that is that it not only lets you control the unit with the editor, but you can also use this as your audio interface. And that means that you can record directly onto your computer through USB. So that's a super convenient feature indeed. So you can use this without needing an additional audio interface. So yeah, on the front here, as I said, we have a speaker out, which controls the level that goes to your actual speaker. If you're using one, of course you don't need to do that, but if you want to. Then over here we have the line out, which controls the level of the XLR out. And something on the back that I haven't mentioned yet is the MIDI in, so you can control the unit via MIDI, change presets and all that good stuff. And again, this is where you connect your speaker cabinet if you're going to use one. And this is where you insert your amplifier. And we also have a ride control on the front here, as well as an LED that lets you know if you're going in the red, basically. And as I mentioned, you can control everything that this thing does on your computer. We'll get into that in a couple minutes. And another cool thing is that you can buy this optional sort of adapter that converts MIDI to Bluetooth. So this is the Bluetooth audio MIDI dual adapter, and you can buy this separately and then connect it into the back here. And then you can control this unit with your phone or your tablet, so your Android or Apple device. So I think that that is a pretty cool feature. So as you can see, you can basically do anything on here that you can also do on the computer app. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I think I covered all the features basically. Let's do another clip with a different type of amplifier and a different type of guitar. I want to try my Ibanez M8M Meshuggah 8-string, the custom shop model. And I'm going to try a 50 watt amplifier this time. My Driftwood Mini Nightmare with the built-in Tube Screamer boost. It's an awesome sounding amplifier. And let's run it into the tube amp expander core and use it as a reactive load once again, but with some different IRs. Take a listen. Really cool. So that was my Ibanez M8M Meshuggah 8-string custom shop. Really cool guitar. Going into the Driftwood Mini Nightmare with the built-in boost on the lead channel, of course. And then running into the Boss Tube Amp Expander core in which I again loaded up some IRs that I created of my vintage 30, the VI30 pack to be precise, and I blended the two SM57s together for that tone. Sounded really snarly and had a great balance overall. A really full sound. Sounded really good in my opinion. And again, if you want those IRs for yourself, check out the links below. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is hook this up again to my Driftwood amplifier and also to my cabinet, my real cabinet, my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12 loaded up with the V30, mic'd up with an SM57 and a Sennheiser MD421 Kompakt, and then also with the line out. And we're just going to play some simple riffs, some simple chords, and we're going to see how all of that sounds, and we're going to try all the features so that you guys can get an idea of the types of things that you can do with this thing, because it's a lot. So yeah, grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's dive in. Enjoy. All right, guys, so I have my Schecter Solo 2 Custom over here. Really good guitar, tuned to drop D. And that is going into the Driftwood Mini Nightmare with the Boss Waza Tube Amp Expander Core. And it's also hooked up to my cabinet. So that's my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12 cab with a V30. Currently, it's mic'd up with an SM57 and a 121. And it sounds something like this. So that's nice and crunchy. And that means that we are using the built-in power amp, which is a 30-watt power amp. And as you hear, it sounds pretty good. It's a little bit on the bright side. So in the Waza Tube Expander Core editor over here, we can do a bunch of things. We'll get into this in a minute, but over here we have the signal chain, and then we have the effects loop, which is also a very handy feature. You know, it comes in very handy for amplifiers, for example, that don't have a built-in effects loop. So then you can put effects after the amplifier, which with those amplifiers you normally couldn't. So that's neat. Then over here, what's the SIG? This is the signal indicator, you know, to show you that there's a signal coming in. And then we have a compressor, delay, and reverb, which we'll try in a minute. And then this is the signal chain that's going into the actual speaker, which is what you're hearing right now. And this is the line out, which we'll get to in a minute as well. There are a bunch of things that we can do over here. So I think that this sound that I have right now is a little bit on the bright and sort of on the fizzy side. Let's take a listen. I mean, it sounds good, but if we want to tweak that sound a little bit, we can do that with the EQ over here. So there are two EQ options. Let's stick with the parametric EQ, and let's cut out some high end, some of those upper frequencies that are a little bit fizzy. So let's try that. We don't need to go very extreme, but you know, that's a good example of what you can do in shaping the tone a little bit here and there. Let's also do a low cut at, let's say, 80 Hertz, just to remove that low end rumble. That makes the sound nice and tight in the bottom end as well. And say that, for example, we want to add some mids, you know, then we can also do that. Let's try that with the low mid frequency band. And of course, you could also scoop the mids and such. So I think that that sounds pretty good. Now over here, of course, you can also change the level. We have a signal indicator as well. So it's kind of cool that you can also shape the tone of the signal that's going into your actual speaker. Of course, you don't need to use this feature at all, but if you want to use a real speaker alongside of the reactive load or just solely rely on the built-in power amp, you can do that. Now, of course, these effects over here, the compressor, the delay, and the reverb, we can also apply those to the speaker out. So let's try that really briefly. Normally, I don't use those types of effects a lot, but let's try it for this video. So I'm going to set the amplifier to the clean channel. And we'll leave the built-in boost on for a little bit of edge. Let's see how that sounds. Cool. So that is the clean tone. Let's try the compressor first to squash the signal a little bit. Of course, we have two types of compressors. So yeah, that's a nice effect, especially for clean tones, I think. You can also use it to sort of limit the dynamic range of your amplifier a little bit if you feel the need to do so. Then, of course, we also have a delay. And there are a bunch of options here. We have a single, a pan, a stereo, an analog, and the SDE 3000. Of course, the analog delay sounds a lot more analog and vintage. So that is quite nice. We have modulation and all that good stuff. And then, of course, the reverb as well. And again, this is quite a versatile reverb with a bunch of different settings. Hall settings, plate, room, and spring. Let's try the spring reverb. And let's try the room. It's quite an extreme room. Let's try the hall. So you get the point. You can change the levels, differently for the speaker out and the line out, which is a nice touch as well. So you can go quite deep here. So that is nice. Now let's switch back to the heavy channel of the amplifier. And as I said, this is with the built-in boost of the amplifier on, so nice, tight, and modern. One thing that I will say that is lacking, in my opinion, is a noise gate. Just to remove some of that fizz and some of that noise that you get when you're using tube amplifiers. But I digress. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the signal to the speaker all the way off, and I'm going to dial up the line out signal so that we're going to switch over to the reactive load portion, basically with the line out. Okay, let's do that right now. So speaker out is going to be set to 0, and then I'm going to dial up the line out signal. So let's take a listen to how this sounds, how I have it set up right now. Sweet. So all the things that we just discussed kind of apply to the line out as well. So we have a line EQ over here, which I already have set up with a low cut. So it's a little bit more tight when you turn that on, just to remove some low-end rumble if you want to. And of course, you can also do the top-end cut. Although this sound, the sound that I'm getting here, is a bit more warm and thick because of how the reactive load affects the tone, right? So I'm going to compensate a little bit on the amplifier itself by raising the presence a little bit, just to open it up a touch. And I also lowered the mid and the bass controls just a little bit. Let's see how that sounds. Cool, sounds nice and crunchy indeed. I'm not going to do any EQ here right now because it sounds fine to me. What I'd like to do before we get into the cabinet section and the mics and the IRs and all that stuff, which is of course here, if you turn that off, it's going to sound really bad, as you can hear. Because when you're going direct with an amplifier through reactive load, you're going to need some sort of speaker, simulation, or an IR to make it sound as if you're actually going through a speaker, as we did just now, with the real speaker portion that we just did. So, we have the cab mic section, the line EQ, the line level, of course, the signal indicator, and all that stuff. Now I've switched back to the clean channel for a second, just so we can try the delay once again, just to see how that sounds with the direct signal. Yeah, so it's nice how you can use those effects both with the real speaker and the line out. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the heavy channel, and then we're going to get into the cab mic portion. So we are back on the heavy channel. And this is a sound that I've dialed in right now with two of my own IRs from the SDS VI 30 pack, which of course is based on the vintage 30. And right now what I'm doing is just blending two SM57s, which are on a different position. And so you have two cab sections over here with level sliders, an A and a B, along with the time alignment, in case you're running into some phase issues and stuff like that. Right now it's set to mono, and we can take a listen to both the individual IRs here, just so you get an idea of how they sound. This is how they sound together. Now let's mute the second SM57. So that is the one, and then let's try the other one. You know, so they both have a different type of sound, basically. And what would happen if we were to switch this one over to my 421 Kompakt mic IR? Then you'll get a different sound. So that's the 421K by itself, and then if we blend the 57 in, we get this sound. So that's a bit more thick in the bottom end, right? So you can do the time alignment thing. If the IRs are in phase as they are now, it's going to sound fine in the middle, but you know, it will sound a little bit weird if you use this control right now. Let's try it out for a sec. So as you can hear, you know, it sounds kind of like a flanger. So in this case, we don't need it at all. You can also flip the phase, which of course is going to result in phase cancellation and all that stuff. Let's also try the stereo setting for a second here. So that's going to give you a very wide sound. One of the mics is on the left side and the other on the right. It's quite cool, actually. Now, of course, we can do anything we want here in terms of the IRs. We can try a different speaker. And let's flip it back to mono there. So I have B muted right now, and we're just going to try my greenback IR. Yeah, so that sounds great as well. Now, of course, you can load all your own IRs into here, and let's see how many slots. We have 64 slots. So that is quite a lot, and I really like that. I have IRs of all my speakers loaded up right now, as you can see. So let's try something else just for fun. That's the DI-77, of course, based on the Divinity 77 by Eminence. Now we have a bunch of other features here as well, including this mix assist over here, which is basically kind of like a preset EQ that you can use to get the guitars to poke through the mix a little bit better, okay? So let's try that with this particular IR that I've loaded up right now, the DI-77 Mix 1. Let me raise the level just a little bit. See what happens when we turn on the mix assist. So that's a quite drastic EQ curve that you're hearing here. It's meant to make the guitars fit the mix better, if you will. In this case, my Rs are pretty mix ready already, but we're just going to mess around with this control so that you can hear what it does. I think there are 3 different types. Let's try the different types. You know, so it makes it a little bit more boxy and it cuts the bottom end, stuff like that. With the transient control, you can make the sound a bit more bright. You know, in this case, I don't really think that we need it, but it's there if you feel the need to make your guitar sound a little bit more compact, you know, and to have them fit the mix a little bit better. Now let's try this air feel thing over here. There's also a control on the tube expander itself where you can dial that in, you know, the amount that you want. But we're just gonna try this. There are 2 modes, Studio 1 and Studio 2. It's basically a reverb, you know? Makes it sound as if you're in a room. Let's try the other type. So that's a nice little touch, you know, just to make it sound more roomy if you want. For me, I'd likely only use that with clean or low gain tones. Now, we've been using IRs so far, but I'd also like to try the built-in cabinets here for a second. The preset section over here, and that changes everything. So let's see how that sounds, how it's set up currently. So that's a little bit louder. Let me compensate by lowering the line out level a little bit. All right, so what we have here is we have a bunch of different cabinets and of course different microphone options and then mic placement as well and mic distance. So that is cool. And of course you can also use that mix assist feature. Let's see what happens when we use that right now. Yeah, so, you know, in this case, it helps a little bit to make the sound a bit more mix ready, in my opinion. But we're going to leave it off just so you guys can really hear the sound of the cabinets. I'm going to turn mic B off. So right now I'm using the 57 and let's put it really close and dead center. Now, what you can also do is just grab the microphone image with your mouse and drag it around. Let's see how that works. So you can also do it that way. If we change the distance, the sound is going to get a little bit more thin and a bit more bright. Let's try that. So that's gonna make the proximity effect a little bit less. Let's try 7 centimeters. And then of course, with the position, let's try that as well. So you're gonna get a darker sound when you move the mic further from the center, right? Let's put it all the way in the middle, the closest setting, and then try the different mics. Of course, they all have a different character. Yeah, so with the 121, the mix assist really helps to make it more mix ready and focused and tight, as you can hear. So that is cool. So with the mix assist off, it's really, really fat, a bit too fat. And with the mix assist on, the sound is more manageable. But the SM57, the good old SM57 works. Let's try some different cabinets. So the standard cabinets. This is the 4x12 standard. Let's also try the R-Fire. Has a bit of a different character. Let's try the Brit Stack. Yeah, so with that cabinet, I would definitely use the mix assist. But that's just a little bit too vintage sounding for me. 4x12 Classic. Just a different flavor, you know? That looked a little bit weird. Must be a bug, but it looks like a greenback. And then let's go to the 4x12 for front of house. So this is probably a cabinet that's going to work really well on stage. So not too tight and a bit of a rolled off top end. 4x10 standard. I'm not typically a 10-inch speaker lover, but let's try them. Of course, something like a tweed is going to work better with, you know, clean tones. That sounds pretty cool. 2x12 Diamond. Your front of house engineer might appreciate those. And then a bunch of smaller cabinets. I think that the 4x12 standard, or perhaps the rectifier, are the best for my needs. And then you can, you know, to fine tune the tone, what you can do is either do the mix assist thing or use the EQ. So let's try something here. Let's use two different microphones. So let's say the SM57 and then a 421 blended in. So now the level is a little bit more on the loud side. Let me lower the line out level. And then we're going to go into the editor here, go to the EQ, and then raise this low cut to 80 Hertz. And then also do a high cut to, let's say, 8K. See how that sounds. Cool. So that should give you an idea of the capabilities that you have with the editor in terms of shaping the tone. One thing that I still need to show you guys is the reactive load modes. So we have stack, which of course has the impedance interaction of, let's say, a 4x12 Meshuggah or V30 loaded cabinet. And then we also have the combo, which of course is more, you know, like a combo, like a smaller amplifier. And those will make the sound a little bit different. So we're on the 4x12 right now, so the stack, and that sounds like this. And when I switch it to the combo, it sounds like this. Switching back. So it's a bit more chunky sounding, basically. So that's two flavors. If you're more of a bluesy, clean player or whatnot, you're going to enjoy the combo mode more, perhaps. And if you're more of a rocker or a metal player like me, you might enjoy the stack mode more. All right. All right, folks. That was the Boss Waza Tube Amp Expander Core. A really cool device, a great reactive load, but again, it's capable of so much more than being just a simple reactive load. And I love it a lot. I mean, I love the fact that you can add EQ, you know, separately to the amp speaker out or to the line out. That is cool. I love the fact that it has a built-in power amp so that you can get very smooth volume changes with this level control over here and attenuate your amplifiers. Really cool feature. The effects loop can come in very handy as well. I don't really use effects loops all that often. And if I do, I tend to use reverb or delay, which is already included in this thing. As I mentioned, I would love to see a noise gate. Maybe they can add that in a firmware update. Who knows, but that would be a great feature, you know, because tube amps, especially high gain amps, they tend to make a little bit of noise. So if we can eliminate that, that would be a plus. I love the IR loading. I love the IR quality a lot. I think that the built-in cabinets are good, but they are a little bit raw sounding. So they require some work, some EQ and all that stuff. So it's going to take a little bit more effort to get a great sound out of them, in my opinion anyway. But yeah, overall, it's a high quality unit. So far, I've really enjoyed it. Controlling it with my laptop has been smooth. It works really well. And with the app and Bluetooth, that's just also very cool that this thing is capable of that. So if you're going on stage, for example, and you're doing sound check, you want to change something, grab your phone, connect it via Bluetooth, and change the settings. It's that simple. So yeah, now I'm really excited about this thing, and I hope that I'll be able to try the big one day, because it has a 100-watt built-in power amp and even more, you know, reactive load sounds, even more impedance interaction, simulations, and all that good stuff. So yeah, people from Boss, great work. You did a great job on the Tube Amp Expander Core. I love it. And thanks so much to the folks at Boss for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. Also, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the Boss Tube Amp Expander Core. And if you want to support the channel, you can buy something, including the Boss Tube Amp Expander Core, at my affiliate links for Thomann and Sweetwater. You can also check out my Tube Amp Doctor affiliate and all that good stuff, or check out my web store where you can buy impulse responses or quad cortex capture packs. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.